Hello guys, my name is TheRussianBadger and welcome to my Battlefield 3 pistol guide. And if you haven't read the title yet, in this video I'll be providing you with all the statistics and general information regarding the pistols of Battlefield 3, in addition to my personal insight and opinion on each weapon. And please keep in mind that this video is not going to provide you with every single statistic about every single weapon, but I will be including the stats that I think are relevant and important to you guys. And if you'd like to know every single little, like, I like that number because it's bigger than that number, if you really want to nitpick your statistics, I've provided a link in the description to a full-length page created by Synthic, and you can browse all those stats for all those weapons until the cows come home. You can browse all the stats that you want. Also, in the description, as usual, you guys should be used to this by now, is a table of contents. And I realize that these guides are usually very long, between 20 and 30 minutes, and instead of forcing you to watch the whole thing by using the table of contents, you can skip between weapons if you only like to see one or two instead of, I have to watch this entire video. Oh god, this, please kill me now. I can't. If you don't want to watch the entire thing, I'm not going to force you to. You can navigate between the individual weapons in the description with a table of contents. End of story. I'm just trying to save you time if you only want to see one or two weapons, and that's the end of the story. And just to establish some basics, there are some things that you should know and keep in mind while viewing these guns and statistics. So here are the basics. The default player health is 100 points in normal mode and 60 points in hardcore, and the pistols are all subject as well to body part multipliers, which means that depending on which body part your bullet makes contact with when it hits the guy, your shot does more or less damage. For example, the pistols have a 2.0 damage multiplier to the head, a 1.0 damage multiplier to the torso and arms, and the legs or feet. I don't know why you would want to shoot a man in his feet. I mean, come on, have some common decency and dignity. But anyways, if you hit him anywhere in the legs or the feet, it has a 0.9 damage multiplier, which is 10% less damage than bullets hitting the torso. However, the two pistols that are the exception to this rule are the MP412 T-Rex, as I like to say, and the 44 Magnum, which have a 1.25 damage multiplier to the upper chest, which is yet another thing that makes the revolvers deadly. And moving on, all of the weapons have a maximum and a minimum damage, which essentially means that the farther away your target is, the less damage your bullets inflict. Hopefully that makes sense. Like if I shoot some catfish from 3 meters away, it's going to do significantly more damage than if I shoot that same guy in the face from 300 meters away. Hopefully that makes sense as well. And this can easily be seen with the damage drop-off diagrams that I provide to you. Basically, the steeper the line, the faster the bullet damage decreases over range, just as a general rule. And in terms of attachments, here's what you need to know. Although there are some exceptions, like the G17 has a laser pointer on it, that's just like sort of an anomaly, and the revolvers don't have attachments, for most of the pistols, you're pretty much choosing between the plain old regular gun, the tactical light, and the suppressor. Okay. The suppressor can be very, very helpful in some situations because essentially what it does is this. It makes your aim down sight spread much more accurate and lowers your recoil, with the major downsides of having much worse hipfire and your bullets doing less damage over range. The main thing that turns me off about this whole damage drop-off is I just can't stand it. The damage drop-off that you suffer with the suppressor, I'm not really a fan. I'm not a fan at all. Like, okay, if you want to be stealthy, you know, ninja, assassin, Jackie Chan, Altair, Solid Snake, Silent, then by all means use a suppressor, but it just isn't my cup of tea. And in terms of the tactical light, how do I put this simply? Okay, you see the sun? You know that big star that's like 92, 93 million miles away from us? Well, imagine having that big ball of fire on the end of your pistol, shoving it in some guy's face that is 6 feet away. Does that sound good to you? And I know you're going to say, oh, and you're probably going to ask too. Are you going to ask me, should you use it, should you not use it? Okay, this is the way that I think about it. This is America, all right? The whole point of this country is that if you want to eat garbage, balloon up to 600 pounds, and die of a heart attack at 42, you can. You are free to do so. And if you're allowed to do that, I'm sure you have the freedom to use the tactical light. So I'm not saying yes. I'm not calling you a catfish. I'm not saying no. I'm simply saying that it is your freedom and it is your choice. So use it if you want to. And the last thing that I like to say is that although I may have some occasional success, I am by no means a trained professional. So if you're sitting back in your Corinthian leather chair with your pipe or something, looking at the gameplay and thinking, Badger is really terrible at this game, you're probably right, because I am nothing above average. And with all this boring stuff out of the way, let's dive into the pistols, starting with the revolvers. The 44 Magnum, or as Johnny Cash would call it, I went right home and I went to bed. I stuck that loving 44 beneath my head. Has a maximum damage of 60 and a minimum damage of 30, firing at a rate of 160 rounds per minute with a 6-round clip and a reload time of 3.90 seconds. And that is one unique thing about the Magnum. Okay. Regardless of how many bullets you fire with the 44 Magnum, it reloads in the same amount of time. So whether you fire one shot or all 6 shots, you will reload at the same speed, which is why it only has one listed reload at 3.90 seconds. And as sad as this may sound, it only has one rate of fire, which is single shot. I know that's probably saddening. I know. I wish we could all have an automatic 44 Magnum in Battlefield 3, but it just doesn't exist. And the 44 has some seriously heavy recoil, but it's manageable because the horizontal recoil is balanced on either side, meaning that the kick is mainly vertical and it's predictable for the most part. And in general, the 44 is basically just a giant hand cannon, and that's how you should use it. Most of the engagements that you'll encounter, you're just going to stomp the other guy if you're accurate. Like, seriously, if you see some rando with a Magnum, I don't see how he's going to get away alive. Like, you can one-shot him if you hit him in the face, and you can two-shot him if you hit him in the torso. As you can probably see in the footage, I'm not super accurate, so for me it's mostly two-shot, but this is where the gun specializes. You can run around one-shotting and two-shotting people with ease. And that damage, okay, I don't think I told you, I previously told you guys about this. It has a 1.25 damage multiplier to the upper chest, which makes it even deadlier in close quarters, and it's not even funny. Like, the thing is, you may run into a little bit of trouble with the hip firing while on the move, because the hip fire gets a lot worse while you're moving around, like the others, but I think it just gets a lot worse on the 44. It really suffers when you're running around trying to hip fire people, but unless you're really doing somersaults while firing, you should be fine if you're an accurate player. I mean, unless you're like Sean Johnson doing backflips trying to shoot people with a 44, which I don't recommend. I think you'll be fine with your hip fire. However, the major disadvantage of the Magnum is the reload time of nearly 4 seconds. Most of the other pistols reload in less than half of that time, which means that they can change magazines and continue firing while you're still scrambling to stick bullets into your revolver. And yes, okay, you can put a 4 times on the Magnum, but unless you're Robaz, King of Sweden, and snipe people across the map, I would not recommend the 4 times scope, because it's, yeah, 4 times the scope, but also 4 times the recoil. Welcome to I just broke my eyesville. It's not a pleasant sight, but still, in my opinion, if you're accurate and you can manage your recoil, the 44 Magnum pretty much destroys every other pistol one-on-one, with the one exception of the MP412 Rex, which is conveniently the next weapon on our list. The MP412 Rex, or T-Rex, has a max damage of 50 and a minimum damage of 28, firing at a rate of 255 rounds per minute, with a 6-round clip and a reload time of 3.40 seconds. And just like the 44 Magnum, the reload speed is the same whether you fire all of your bullets or only one of your bullets. And yet again, although I wish we could all have it, the Rex is a semi-automatic weapon. You have to go bang, bang, bang. There's no full auto. I know it's really depressing, but there's no full auto. And for the most part, the 412 Rex is comparable to the 44 Magnum, and it's even better in some categories. For example, the Rex has a much higher rate of fire at 250 rounds per minute instead of the 160 rounds per minute of the 44. It also reloads half a second faster and has comparable recoil, yet it's significantly lighter recoil than the 44. The Magnum may be better over some longer ranges. I don't know how many of you guys run around and snipe people with these revolvers, but in terms of raw power, the Rex is on par and arguably better than the 44. Granted, the MP412 Rex is slightly worse on hipfire, and that may make a difference to you, but still, the Rex has that same one-shot headshot and two-shot torso I don't know what a torso. I think I meant I like combined torso and shot. Maybe I should make that into a word, torshot. But it still has that same one-shot headshot and two-shot torso shot ability that the Magnum has at most distances. It also has that, oh, it's so fine and dandy. The 1.25 damage multiplier to the upper chest. It's so good for just destroying people, and it's especially even more convenient for finishing off people that you chunked with your primary. So overall, it's a slightly less accurate 44 Magnum with lighter recoil, a faster reload, and a higher rate of fire. I mean, both revolvers are extremely powerful in close range if you hit your shots, and they dunk all the other pistols if you're accurate. End of story. Like, run around one-shotting and two-shotting people until your heart is content. And next on the list is everybody's favorite marshmallow gun, the M93R. I was gonna make a pirate joke, but I ended it halfway. Whatever. The M93R. The M93R has a max damage of 20 and a minimum damage of 12.5, firing at a rate of 900 rounds per minute, with a reload time of 1.6 seconds while empty and 1.35 seconds while not, and is capable of firing in both burst and single firing modes, with a magazine size of 20 rounds. It also has the lowest vertical recoil of all the pistols, with a hipfire that is slightly worse than most of the other semi-automatics. And you know what? Sometimes I just want to use this thing as a primary. Not only because it's a marshmallow gun, but, okay. Granted, it's not as good as it was pre-patch, but it's still deadly for a few reasons. Number one, it's very easy to use. I mean, obviously it's burst, but you don't have to click very quickly for it essentially to become fully automatic. For that same reason, it also has the capability to output damage that is so... It's like a burst damage, it's really, really quick, and you kill opponents very, very fast, if you ask me. This is definitely where... It's one of those weapons where you just go, you start firing, it's just, where did your health go, bro? Where did it go? It was here a second ago, and now it's gone forever, at least until you respawn. It just kills people quicker than you think it would. I also consider it to be a very deadly finishing weapon for this reason. Okay, I was thinking about how exactly I would communicate this, but this is the way that I think about it. Okay. Let's say you really chunked a guy with your primary, yet you didn't kill him. He's almost dead. But you have to pull out your M93R. Unlike the other revolvers or the semi-autos, you don't even need to be accurate. You really don't. If he's that low health, like you chunked him but you didn't kill him, you don't even need to be accurate. Just spray at the guy and he's easily going to go down. So I think that's what this... It's essentially what makes this weapon so useful. You can spam the bullets and output the damage very quickly, which is extremely effective when enemies group up in some sort of fustercluck, or like I said, when you need to finish someone off. The only downside is that I really don't like the marshmallow gun over range. It's just... It's something about the iron sights and the recoil and the way that the burst works and the damage. I'm not really a big fan of aiming down sight and trying to pick somebody off from a distance. It's not really what I think this weapon should be used for. I think it's much more effective just running around and raffle stomping people with the remarkable hip fire of your marshmallow gun. That's just the way I think it should be used. So overall, it's great for those clusters, finishing people off and running around and spraying everybody in the face. Just don't try to snipe anyone with it because you're going to have a bad time. I don't think you're going to be very successful, if you ask me. And the next weapon on the list is the G18. The G18, also known as Dat Glock or Dat Glock, has a max damage of 20 and a minimum damage of 12.5, firing at a rate of 900 rounds per minute with a reload time of 1.6 seconds while empty and 1.35 seconds while not, and it's also capable of firing in both fully automatic and single firing modes with a magazine size of 19 rounds. It also has a moderate vertical recoil with a hip fire that is slightly worse than the other semi-automatic pistols. It's sort of similar to the M93R. And yes, you guessed it, it is very identical in many, many ways to the marshmallow gun. When you compare it to the M93R, the G18 has the same damage, rate of fire, and reload time, but it has the disadvantage of one less bullet in a magazine and worse recoil that is not only much higher in all directions, it's this weird, awkward cluster. And although there's a suppressor that can be attached to the G18, let me say this. I never use a suppressor on any of my pistols. Like the damage drop-off and the worse hip fire, it's not worth better recoil and aim down sight spread. At least in my opinion, it's not worth it, and I really don't enjoy suppressed pistols. It doesn't feel like you're shooting an actual gun anymore. You're shooting like grapes or you're shooting peas. I don't really like it. I don't like suppressed pistols in general. And I'm not going to call these two pistols of the M93R and the G18 spray and pray because that's more of an LMG thing, but they're pretty much the same except the Glock is fully automatic and the M93R is burst. But if I was going to give an edge to one or the other, I would definitely say the M93R. Basically all the stats are the same, yet the M93R has that extra bullet and better recoil, plain and simple. But maybe, okay, let me say this, maybe. If DICE comes out with a patch where you can somehow turn the Glock sideways and look completely baller while getting huge accuracy increases, I might probably definitely go back to the Glock forever. Like if you could turn it sideways and say something along the side, like along the lines of break yourself before you shot somebody, I would never use another weapon ever. That would be, I'm using the Glock until the end of time. But sadly, DICE has not patched yet. So DICE, please. DICE, please patch. DICE, please. Okay, end of story. The next weapon on the list is the very unique pistol, the M1911. The M1911 has a max damage of 34 and a minimum damage of 14.3, firing a rate of 333 rounds per minute with a reload time of 2.05 seconds while empty and 1.75 seconds while not, and it's capable of firing fully automatic with a magazine size of 8 rounds. It also has a favorable vertical recoil and a hipfire that is on par with other semi-automatic pistols. It's also available in a standard version, but can be equipped with your favorite Tactical Sun, Tactical Light, rather, attachment, or a suppressor. I really enjoy the kick because, for the most part, at least the way that I usually don't fire it running around, but most often you'll notice that the recoil is almost completely vertical. So you just pop, pop, pop. You don't really need to readjust in between shots. It's very, very easy to manage. The thing is, it's basically a hybrid between a semi-automatic regular pistol, the ones with high capacities, and the revolvers. So instead of one-shotting and two-shotting people like the 44 and the Rex, it can two-shot and three-shot people because of the high close range damage of 34 per shot. It also, like the other high-capacity semi-automatic pistols, because of the quick reload, it has higher sustained fire than a Magnum or a Rex. So you can pop, reload really quickly, and then continue to fire instead of doing a ton of damage like a revolver and then having to reload for a really long time. So in that respect, with the fast reloads, it's sort of like a high-capacity pistol. But still, for the punch that it packs, I don't think the capacity is high enough. I really don't. Like, if I'm on a more spread out map where there's more 1 versus 1 engagements, I'll probably go with the revolver. And if it's a smaller map with more clusters of enemies, I'll probably go with like a burst pistol or a full auto pistol or like a pistol with a high capacity. I just don't see the appeal of the 1911 in between those two roles. I just don't get it. I mean, yes, it has higher damage than most of the other pistols. But I just don't think the capacity is high enough to compete. I think it's a greater decision to go with a pistol that has slightly less damage but a much higher capacity, or a revolver. The thing with the M1911, I get shot in the face while reloading because I have such few rounds to shoot, and I'm not two-shotting people like a revolver, and that's all that I have to say. So the next weapon on the list is the M9. How boring. Okay, the M9 is not boring, but I think we've all been using it since the beta. Actually, for me, I've been using it since the alpha, so I don't know if that makes it boring because I've used it so much, but it has a max damage of 25 and a minimum damage of 13.75, firing at a rate of 400 rounds per minute, with a reload time of 1.6 seconds while empty and 1.35 seconds while not. It's only capable of semi-automatic fire, and it contains 15 rounds in a magazine. It also has almost purely vertical recoil and can be equipped with either a Tactical Light, your favorite, or a suppressor, or if you don't want to put anything, you can go nothing at all. You can go completely plain Jane on the M9 if you really want to. I don't even think that I need to explain the M9 all that much. It kills in 4 shots, has a quick reload, pretty great hip fire, really vertical recoil, and a high capacity of 16 rounds total. I'd say that it's pretty deadly as it does as much damage as an assault rifle at close range with 25 damage per bullet, but this is still the main thing. Okay, this is the main thing that I want to communicate about the M9. I genuinely think that you need a quick trigger finger to make this weapon worth your while. For example, If you can rapidly fire really well, then you can put people down extremely quickly with this thing. Even take out groups of enemies if you're fast enough. But if you can't rapid fire, you're better off using a revolver or a fully automatic or burst pistol. That's really what I think it boils down to. If you can tap, tap, tap super quickly, this weapon will work wonders for you. If not, bite the pillow and prepare your anus, because it's not going to be enjoyable and it's not going to be fun if you can't rapid fire. Next up, we have the MP443. The MP443 has a max damage of 25 and a minimum damage of 13.75, firing at a rate of 400 rounds per minute with a reload time of 1.6 seconds while empty and 1.35 seconds while not. It's capable of firing semi-automatic fire and contains 17 rounds in a magazine. It has almost purely vertical recoil, which I really enjoy, and can be equipped with either a tactical light, suppressor, or nothing at all if you want to go plain Jane. And I know you probably just caught on what I just said. Wait a minute, why does that sound the exact same as the M9? Well, the MP443 is the exact same weapon as the M9. Literally everything, like every little thing that I can think of is the same except for two little exceptions. Okay. The MP443 bullet flies at a slightly lower speed, but it's not really like that makes a huge difference. Like, at least in my experience, bullet speed does not make a tremendous difference. The other difference is that the MP443 has 2 more rounds in its magazine. That's about it. Like, basically, the MP443 and the M9, in every other category, including rate of fire, damage, reload time, recoil, aim down sight spread, hip fire spread, I'm running out of fingers on my hand to compare similarities, but they're the exact same. I feel like some guy at DICE just made these two women... I almost said women. That was the Freudian slip because I'm thinking of the Flash episode right now. Okay, like, I seriously feel like some guy at DICE made these two weapons at the same time and bragged about it. Like, hey guys, I just made these two weapons at the same time because I'm a stud, and then he directly puts his hands into mashed potatoes. I don't know why I thought Justice League of Flash, I don't know why I thought of the Flash from Justice League and superheroes right there, but anyways, so I don't have much to say beyond that. They're pretty much the same thing and should be employed in the same fashion, and even though I think the M9 has slightly better iron sights, they're pretty much twins. Like, on basically every level, they're pretty much twins. So, the last weapon on the list is also pretty similar, but it's got this special little caveat to it. It's the G17C. The G17C has a max damage of 25 and a minimum damage of 13.75, firing at a rate of 400 rounds per minute with a reload time of 1.6 seconds while empty and 1.35 seconds while not. It's only capable of firing semi-automatic fire and contains 17 rounds in a magazine. It has almost purely vertical recoil and can be equipped with a suppressor. Now wait a damn minute, Badger. Didn't you just say that twice before? Yes, I did. Okay? The G17C has the same stats as the MP443 and the M9. And I know you're probably as appalled as I am. DICE in charge of making their pistols diverse. Wait, what? Okay. You're probably going to want to know this. So those of you that clicked away before this, the joke's on you because... Actually, the joke is definitely on you because I didn't tell you this yet. I know you're probably tuning out saying, meow, 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 same gun, okay, thanks, bye, but okay, wait. The G17C has a major advantage. Although you can't have a tack light on it, it has a built-in laser sight. That means it has amazing hip fire, and it's much better than the other two for close quarters. But other than that, the laser sight are the same. Like, other than the laser sight, MP443, M9, and G17C are the same. Other than the laser sight. That's about it. And the little magazine size difference with the M9, but for basically everything that you would ever notice, they're the same pistols, pretty much. So, you know, they kill in 4 shots, purely vertical recoil, faster reload, meow, 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 that's about it. That's about it, and that's all that I have to say. I want to thank you guys very much for watching. I want to thank all of your generous thank you for all your generous feedback on me introducing myself yesterday. I appreciate all of your kind words, but other than that, for your bonus clip, I'm going to show you the greatest thing that Darth Vader has ever done. I know of the last time that I uploaded a Star Wars video, one of you tried to combine Darth Vader and Badger, and you came out with Darth Vader. I don't think that's very appropriate, but I don't know why. Okay, like why? But anyways, that's going to be your bonus clip, literally the greatest thing that Darth Vader has ever done, and that's about it. I want to thank you guys very much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Auf Wiedersehen und bis bald, and let me get a little bit of saliva here. Later.